it seems to be also like kind of the role that like the artist plays with like creating a painting, that there's both like I think the highest form of like painting is to be like a vessel basically, so that you can kind of connect with this like kind of unknown like ocean of potentiality, and then somehow get some sort of like concreteness in the painting that then people can interact with. And the best paintings are relevant today as they were when they were painted. And I think that's kind of shows that it can act as a vessel that like people can try to like glean the utility from.
Welcome to the Bold Brush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold. Brush. My name is Laura Arango-Bear, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. In this episode, we sat down with Samuel Hoskins, a realist artist based in the Pacific Northwest whose goal is to use his art as a bridge between dreams and material reality. Sam tells us all about his journey before and after graduating from the Florence Academy, as well as experimenting with different mediums and exploring spiritual and philosophical themes in his art. He reminds us that as creatives, we are vessels for ideas and images that we share with the world around us to connect with others. We also discuss the importance of overcoming blocks by having a dedicated studio space, and also the value of self-care, balance, and continually learning through different environments and experiences. Samuel also tells us all about his YouTube channel, where he shares tutorials on making medium and even lead white paint from scratch, as well as time lapses of his work. He also shares advice for aspiring artists on having the right mentality when attending art school and figuring out one's personal artistic goals. He also recommends gaining experience through small local shows before pursuing larger opportunities. Finally, Sam tells us about his booth at the upcoming Bellevue Arts Museum Art Fair and his upcoming show in his hometown in Salem, Oregon at Salem Art Association. Welcome, Samuel, to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm excited to be part of this.
Yeah, me too. I'm happy to have you. A fellow, Florence person. Despite not going to the same academy, the experience is very similar. At least, the life in Florence and everything. And then also your work is very beautiful. I really love the spiritual aspect of your work and how you try to, join the spiritual with the technical side, which we were discussing a little bit before we started, and how challenging it is. But before we dive into your work, do you mind telling us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I guess the quick rundown is I went to the Florence Academy right after high school. So did the full 3-year program there, and then invited on to stay on an extra year as like a graduate in residence. And I did some teaching as well to like the new incoming students. And yeah, so then I finished that up last year, and then this whole year has been like the first full year of being in the real world outside of the the safety and the confines of the academy. So it's been a really cool experience of I guess just getting into, yeah, galleries, the real world, like kind of figuring out what it is that I want to use those tools that I got at the academy to create. So it's been a fun journey so far.
Yeah, and the journey continues. It's a very
Yeah.
long journey. Yeah, and also especially right after, graduating and after, how I said that safe space of the academy, it becomes even more challenging oftentimes for graduates. Because now is the time for you to experiment and to let go and really, I guess, yeah, really explore, right? And you're now in that phase, but even then, like your work is very, very beautiful. And I wanted to ask you, when did you decide that this was your path, that you wanted to follow the path of the artist?
Well, like, I guess it's kind of a cliche, like of just I think I've always been kind of drawn toward that direction, but it didn't take the form of like painting until probably I was 13 or 14. But before that, like as soon as I learned how to read and write, I was stapling papers together and making like comic books and stories and things like that, writing and drawing in them. But I think what was kind of interesting is I would always also try to sell them as well. So, Christmas Eve when and my birthday or like stuff like that, like family gatherings, I would always have a little like booth, little table, and I would be selling these little books for like, 50 cents or $1 or something like that. But yeah, it was just all part of that process, I guess, and it was kind of a fun thing to do and to be like a storyteller. And then I think it was probably around like when I was 12 or 13. There was actually a friend, a student that like came into my middle school, and he was homeschooled, and I guess this was his first time in like a regular like a normal school. And in the homeschool group, he would take was taking these art classes, like learning how to very basic, like kind of drawing, painting type classes. And I just remember like looking at the stuff he was doing and being like, whoa, this is like way above like the average person in my class, like my own skill level, stuff like that. And that was kind of when it like clicked to me that like drawing and painting was something that you could invest time in the same way that like you could with math or grammar or science or anything you could learn in school. You could do the same thing with drawing and painting and actually like get tangibly better. And so that was kind of opened my eyes to that. And I ended up taking some summer workshops at that like homeschool group to kind of get the basics. And that was really when I kind of grappled onto the drawing and painting side of storytelling.
Thanks. Yeah, I love that. And that, it makes sense. I feel like we were kind of talking about this too, how, being an artist is such an organic thing, right? And homeschooling, in my opinion, is a bit more organic than, going to a school and like being part of the system, which allows that creativity and that openness to be able to explore like basically anything. So for a person
Yeah,
who wants to like learn how to paint and draw, like it's very convenient to have that freedom. Of course, as long as you're also getting your education on the side, like the basics, then
yeah,
that's what matters. But that's so awesome. You never know who you meet that really changes your direction in life like that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I wanted to know because you went to Florence right after high school. How did you hear about Florence Academy?
So there was like the arts like local art community center in my hometown. They have a program for high schoolers where they connect high schoolers with a practicing artist in the hometown
Mm,
in my hometown and to kind of mentor them and work with them a little bit. And then there was like weekly meetings where we did different activities and stuff like that. And it was just a really random happen chance that I got connected with an artist who had fairly recently moved into my hometown. And he was just like the nicest guy in the world and kind of taught me the basics of oil painting and kind of introduced me to the whole like atelier scene.
mhm,
And so that kind of is what kind of got that onto my radar. And then it was my it was my junior year of high school, like kind of toward the winter, and I was looking at like I guess a more higher level art education, something to do over the summer. And I was looking at applying to the Florence Academy, the New Jersey branch, like for a summer workshop. And it wasn't even on my radar to go like to leave the country to go somewhere else, but my dad was actually a huge supporter of it, and he was like, "Well, if you're going to do this, like he saw that I was like this is what I wanted to do, and I was really passionate about it." And he was like, "Well, you might as well just go to the real thing and try to actually like go to Florence." And so I was able to do some fundraising and things like that, and actually go to the Florence Academy, the summer workshop at my junior year of high school. So I was 17 at the time. And so that was after I saw like the quality of work and the teachers and like that just like opened my eyes to a whole nother level of like things that could be done that it was not on my radar at all. There's nobody in my hometown that had any training like that before. So as soon as I came back from the US from that, I was like totally sold that I wanted to get this sort of education so that I could use these tools to create paintings.
mhm.
And so that senior year of high school was pretty rough because I was not super motivated to do any of the classes because I was so like set on I want to go to Florence. I want to learn how to draw and paint. And then
Right.
yeah, I applied in the winter and got in, and yeah, that's that.
That's awesome. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah, and then I can imagine, yeah, the demotivating aspect of like, well, all of these classes in high school are just geared for people who want to go to university and like being an artist, you don't really need any training technically. The training helps especially if you want to be a realist painter, which is of course the majority of people that I've had on the podcast are realist painters. So it is really nice that, there's like that trade school sort of aspect of it. But I understand it does get kind of boring when you're in high school and you're like, why do I have to continue with calculus? Like I'm gonna go do something else. I don't think I'll need this for painting.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. I mean, maybe basic algebra, but definitely not calculus or any of
yeah,
the other crazy subjects that you might get in high school. Um, but yeah, that is really awesome, and it's very fortunate too that you were able to go so you're like young. A lot of people end up going maybe after college or maybe even later. So it's quite great that you were able to go so fresh out of high school and even during high school.
yeah. Yeah, no, it was very much I attributed that a lot to having such supportive parents. And yeah, so they've been on board 100%. So it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool to have that sort of support and encourage me. They definitely saw from a maybe a higher vantage point that this was kind of the direction that like I was heading toward.
Yeah, yeah, and you make a great point. I mean, having that support, not everyone gets that familial support. They might get support from
Yeah.
friends or from their partner if they have a partner. But yeah, it can be really hard without that support, and it's really awesome that your parents were able to nurture uh that side of you as well, so that you could go off and try it. And of course, your work, like I was saying, is very spiritual. It's very beautiful, and I wanted to ask you actually about your work.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to know. You're fresh out of school, though, kind of. Um, but do you kind of have an idea of what goal you aim to reach with your work?
Yeah, I think the way I think about it is I guess like I don't have a shortage of like ideas or like these images or things that kind of come to me, which I think a lot of creatives have that kind of comes to them. And a lot of people like have these ideas, but they just kind of pop out, kind of randomly, like when you're walking or in dreams or, at the gym or something like that. And so I always kind of thought of it as like the very like earliest forms of religion were like these like proto-religious like people who basically worship like these stellar demons, and they were kind of ingenious enough to realize that like whatever these things in the stars in the skies were, they were of like a different ontology than we were. They were like something of a different nature. And so that there had to be some sort of intermediary that kind of bridged the gap. And so like there's these like statues that, through this early religious environment, that they could like call down the demons into the statues, and they could exist in the statues, and then people could interact with the statues and kind of like extract the gnosis from that. And that seems to be like a very like early form of kind of like the role that like Christ is as like this bridge, and like the muse in Greek mythology. And it seems to be also like kind of the role that like the artist plays with like creating a painting, that there's both like I think the highest form of like painting is to be like a vessel basically, so that you can kind of connect with this like kind of unknown like ocean of potentiality, and then somehow get some sort of like concreteness in the painting that then people can interact with. And the best paintings are relevant today as they were when they were painted. And I think that's kind of shows that it can act as a vessel that like people can try to like glean the utility from. And I think that's it's hard to kind of make that concrete, but that's definitely like I feel like what I want to be able to do is to somehow just be a vessel for these ideas that kind of come to me, more than like trying to like show my own like subjective experience, which I think that comes through anyways. But I don't
Mhm.
think you have to like work like I don't think that should be like the ultimate goal. But
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. And I'm totally with you because I can relate to that. Um, I do see that, a lot of creative people truly are like how you were saying, like channels to bring forth, I guess, images that could impact others and help them maybe understand deeper truths about life and the meaning of life and everything, that ranges from like joy and suffering and all the aspects of what it means to be a human and the human experience.
yeah,
So I appreciate that you're, a fellow. open channel who really wants to embody that and receive it and give it back to everyone else. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then, once it's out there, then people can, it's like the free market. If, the ideas can die, they can, you know, reproduce, they can change, but like I think the role is just to get them out there and then let people kind of decide what sort of utility it has.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, kind of like how Carl Jung talks about the collective unconscious, right? Even if those images quote unquote disappear, someone else will channel them anyway. It
Yeah,
could be channeled through a painting or through music or poetry or a book. Like it's endless, right? There are like endless images that we can all give. And to also connect to your how you said about the subjective experience, obviously the way that you would paint an idea is very different from the way that I would paint it, right?
yeah,
So that also brings forth that, I guess, personal view of the world because you can only see the world as you see it, right?
yeah,
You can try to put yourself in other people's shoes, which is very important, but nevertheless, like you're still viewing it from your own personal experience as a human on Earth, which is
yeah,
yeah, which is cool. Dang, that's awesome. And then I did want to ask because since we are talking about, how rough it is to I guess to bring forth these ideas after, learning such a material technique, such a grounded earthly thing, which is painting and applying the paint so that it looks real, right? You have to learn reality. But then these ideas are much more lofty, right? They're much more of another world that's really never been
yeah,
seen unless it's through dreams or through very quick images that hit you, right? Um,
yeah.
do you ever feel like blocked or have you felt blocked since you've left the school and have you been able to overcome those blocks?
Yeah, I think it's definitely like if like in a new environment, in a new situation, which is very much like a big milestone to finish like your education, the schooling, and then to be on your own. It's like there's like pathways in every direction, and so it can be a bit like you can feel a bit like paralyzed, or at least I did, with like all these different directions I could go with it. And so I guess I've been, I think a lot of artists are very critical of themselves. And so I've been trying to be much more gracious to allow myself to kind of, go down one road a little bit and then come back. And I think this past year I've been going down a lot of different roads, but maybe I'm not too far, pretty much at the same spot, but it's not the same spot because I've been exploring all these other kind of avenues. And then I think it's really helpful, like if I feel stuck, a lot of it is kind of environmental, I feel like. So like I was really wanting and excited to go back to the US after spending 4 years in Florence because the environment is very much saturated with um, the very materialistic way of going about a painting. And
Mm,
that's amazing, that's great, but it's only like maybe a third of what I'm hoping to do as a painter. And so it's really nice to get in a different environment and to kind of have that space to explore, even just maybe it's a bit off topic, but even just like to have a studio space where these extremely talented individuals like the and teachers aren't going to see what I'm working on in different stages. Like I like my
yeah.
studio, nobody sees it unless if I like want people to.
Mm,
And so it's much more freeing to like explore and make mistakes and just like throw paintings away, put them against the wall, or come back to them later, and to leave things that look super bad and super raw because like there's no like I'm very sensitive to what other people think about me. Like
mm.
that's something that I struggle with and that I try to work on, but it's just so nice to just be able to choose what people see for the work. And so that's been really nice. But yeah, anyways, like the environment's a big thing. And so like definitely feeling stuck, even if it's just an afternoon, just to get away to something else, go on a hike, or like I've been spending the last 2 months in Europe doing a lot of like plein air painting and things like that. And I was getting quite burnt out in the studio, and then
Mm.
now I'm quite burnt out from plein air painting. I'm very excited to go back to the studio. So for me, it's really nice just to have a variety.
Yeah. Yeah, I really want to dig a little more in what you said about having a space
Yeah,
because I think a lot of people underestimate the sacredness of the artist studio, right? A lot of people they misunderstand, like, they'll think, "Oh, cool, an artist studio, like, that's so nice," but it's more than that, it's like a space for you to really incubate your ideas and to put them forth, and it's such a like you said, it's such a sensitive place, and obviously, working at Florence Academy and especially being around a lot of people who, like we said, are very much more grounded in terms of their, the way that they paint or what they want to paint, it's very earthly. And that's fine. Like we said, it's beautiful, it's well made, but they wouldn't understand what you're going for with your own work. And that can definitely hinder you, right? That can hold you back from fully expressing whatever it is that you want to bring forth. And then also that experimental stage, like it's so sensitive to outside observers, right? Like, you don't want someone to come in and start judging with their preconceived notions without them really understanding the process that you're trying to create or trying to go through. So I
yeah,
completely agree. Yeah. Definitely getting out of like, going into the studio and out of the studio is just as important. Um, but yeah. And then another place that you're kind of not quite out, but not quite in, right, is the internet, right? So
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to start a YouTube channel? Which, by the way, it's really cool. I highly recommend that everyone who's listening to this to go check it out. It's such a vibe. And he has some great tutorials, which we're going to talk about. But also, why did you decide to start it? And how was that experience like for you?
Um, well, it's been a great experience. I'll say that first most, but it's definitely like there's kind of two elements to it. It's me just like kind of playing around with different things that I want to try to do, like in a video format, and then just documenting what I do anyways. And so it's kind of a nice balance because like I have a lot of time lapses of paintings I do, and it's a way for people to like watch me like in my studio, but
Mhm,
also like I have no pressure of having something leaving something in a bad stage because if it's out on YouTube, then like I'm happy with the end result. If I'm not happy with the end result, like the video just doesn't exist. And so it's
mhm,
nice to it's yeah, it's a good way that it doesn't make too much more work for me, but I
mhm,
love like I think it's really important to have an online presence. And I feel like this the way I'm doing it is not super distracting to me. And so it's been
mhm,
just kind of playing around with things. And then also like I make a lot of my own materials either like occasionally or like stuff that I'll use like regularly. And so if I'm making something like you can just like put a camera on a tripod and then people can find that quite interesting and it doesn't take too much extra work. I don't want YouTube to be something that takes all my time. It's definitely like a second or third focus of mine.
At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by FASO. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day by day, step by step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So, if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com faso.com/podcast. That's faso.com/podcast. Mhm, mhm. I really love that though. I really love that you I was looking and definitely your tutorials are very interesting, especially, like how you make your own damar or your own black oil, which we were talking about a little bit before. But I wanted to ask you how like first of all, how did you even figure out how to make black oil? Because I feel like there are a bunch of recipes for it. And then
Yeah.
do you recommend it?
Yeah, well, at the academy, the Florence Academy, there was a lot of material lectures where, and over the course of the 4 years I was there, I think we covered just about everything, even like cleaning your own linseed oil, which I'm doing as well. But like all these very like kind of esoteric, alchemical, like kind of lost hidden recipes for these different things, was something that was a kind of a common interest with a lot of people at the academy. So it was fun to talk about and play around with and learn how to do it safely and how to do it where it's not going to like destroy or melt your painting or something like that, but to kind of
Yeah.
get into the like preservation aspects of it and the safety aspects of it and the like the utility aspects of it. So it was definitely like all the stuff I've done, I've had like a sketchbook with a bunch of notes taken with from watching people like who have done it for a long time and are quite competent at doing it. And
Mhm.
so like with black oil, I guess wanting to use that was kind of born out of the frustration of painting with like ivory black at the academy, because at the academy like we use lead white, which is like the fastest color on earth to dry, and so that will be like dry the next day like 100%, but the ivory black's very slow drying, and if you were to add anything to kind of expedite the drying time, it just gets super oily and watery and it's not very archival and it's just not nice to work with. And so the idea of the black oil was to kind of cut it into making the ivory black, and so that it kind of expedites the drying time, but it doesn't get too oily as well.
Mhm.
Um, and so that has been really nice. I've been pretty much painting with that this past year since I've been out of the academy for my blacks, and it's very nice. The only thing with black oil is because it speeds up the drying time, you don't want it in the lead white because it dries too fast, and then
Yeah.
that's not good for the painting. But I found that if like I make the ivory black with some of the black oil in it, then like it's kind of like it's in the ratio without me even having to think about it, because if I'm mixing, the colors together, as there gets more white in it, there's less black, and then there's less black oil consequently. So it's kind of a way to make sure that I don't even have to think about it, and it stays like it kind of respects that it doesn't become like drying too fast.
Right. And I also wanted to ask because so then you buy the actual ivory black pigment, right? Just the powdered pigment then.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Where do you even get it? And where do you recommend people try to get it from?
I've gotten like the pigments I get is from natural pigments. I think it's called
Nice.
bone black. They call it there, but it works great. I make like my own lead white, yellow ochre, and then like black, and then like a castle earth or like an umber. But then like kind of the other colors, like if I have, I guess, more like chromatic colors or kind
Mhm.
of the ones that are slightly more expensive that I don't use very much of,
Right.
I'll just use like tube paint for that.
Nice.
But
Yeah, and then
yeah,
about your lead white actually, because you just reminded me that you do have a video on how you make your lead white. How has that
yeah,
been like? Because I heard that the old way of making it, they used manure. I don't know if you use manure
yeah.
for it.
I did, yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, because I made that last summer, and yeah, I just literally just looked on looked on Craigslist for horse manure, and there was a place like 2 minutes from my house, like a farm that just said like had a big pile out back that you could take as much as you want. Um, but yeah, that I was really surprised at how heavy it was. The
Mhm.
finished product. It was like a not not a not a super impressive jar of it, and it was like 5 kilos, or I don't know, like 12 pounds or something like that. It was a lot in a little container. But I mean, it's like pure lead. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was interesting. Definitely, like I don't know if I'll do that always. I got a lot of lead out of it, and it was a cool experience. But um, I had to like there's a lot of safety things you got to be really careful with,
Mhm.
and that's the biggest thing. Um,
Right.
and it's quite time consuming as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but just the experience itself. I mean, imagine being a
Yeah,
painter, right? Way back then before the tubed paint, that they had to go through the process themselves and because I feel like, back then, especially like it was much harder to get pigments, right? They would have to like
yeah,
go to their local like pigment guy and whatever they had on hand was what worked. But definitely, the horse manure thing, that's insane. That is like
yeah,
so I really like how that really ties into what you said about the whole alchemical aspect of making your own paint and like making your own mediums and stuff. Because it does make you feel like down to the level of the actual paint, right? Not just the canvas, not just the actual painting aspect. The paint itself, right? Making it from scratch is such a transmutation, right? You're turning these pigments into paint and the paint becomes an image and then that image becomes reality, right? It's like
yeah.
kind of trippy when you think about it that way. Um but yeah, so definitely I feel like people should if they really want to make lead white, they should check out your tutorial because I think that's amazing. And then I did want to ask what was the most enjoyable YouTube video that you've made to date?
Um, I I like I really enjoy making the videos
Mm,
of just like the kind of the time lapse videos, and then
mhm.
I like kind of will have like a talk or a dialogue or even like a mock interview with like AI like talking to something. But those I make just for fun. They like hardly get any views or anything like that compared to
Oh,
like the material ones. But like they're just kind of fun to it's fun to just kind of talk about like I read a lot and I really like to like put myself in the shoes of like different ideas and to think about things in different ways. And so
mhm.
it's fun to kind of talk about the ideas that I'm thinking about while I'm making the painting, and to kind of put it in that format. It's kind of a way because like a lot of the paintings that um, like a lot of people do who have had like the academic background, like they're quite time consuming, and
Mhm.
so there's not a whole lot that you can kind of release into the world as far as like content goes. And so it's kind of a cool way to kind of like extend the I guess the format or the way that I'm showing the painting into the world in a way that's like different, and I don't feel like it like tarnishes or like lowers the quality of it. But it's just kind of cool to kind of see the whole process of it. It's
Yeah.
definitely it's something I wish I would have loved to have seen like with Rembrandt or Rubens or Velasquez or any of those painters. Like I would love to see a time lapse and then hear what they were thinking about and the kind of these ideas. So I guess that's just kind of yeah, it's just been a fun kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree, those are really fun too because, especially as creatives, having those, like, thought experiments and having those dialogues are so key also to, one, understanding yourself, and then also, like, for someone who's really interested in hearing it from you and wants to know what you're thinking about, right? It's really cool for them too, because you're passing on that I guess that information that what you're going through, right? Is there
Yeah.
any book that you've read recently that's really like been on your mind a lot?
That's a good question. Um, I guess I've kind of been rereading like pieces of the Art Spirit again. I read it when I was very early at the academy, and so it's been kind of cool to come back to it from a very different perspective. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's definitely like I would recommend to anyone who's a creative in any way to read that. But yeah, it's such a cool. Um, I don't know. It's just always like I think ideas can be very intoxicating and very
Mhm.
yeah, just like you can get high on ideas. And I feel like
Yeah.
that book, after I read it, I'm always like, okay, I'm ready to take on the world. And so if you ever need like you want to feel like that like the role of the artist is important and and to have like some concrete but not but concrete philosophical kind of frameworks that you can kind of bolster yourself up on. I think that book
Yeah.
has a lot of really like quotable lines and yeah, just very elegantly written that gives a lot of importance to the role of the artist.
Yeah. Funny enough, a friend literally just gifted me a copy of that book. So
Yeah.
it's kind of trippy that you mentioned it. I'm like, huh, maybe I should actually make some time to read it. I've been so busy, but
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I did kind of flip through it, and it almost seems a little bit like stream of consciousness in some parts, where he seems to
Mhm.
like give tips that also like it's like one tip, and then it continues on to the next and the next and the next. Is that kind of like how it is?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because before I started reading, like, Harold Speed and Robert Henry, I think The Art Spirit is written by, and kind of the more art philosophical books, I was reading a lot of, like, Carl Jung and Nietzsche and
Mhm.
even, like, getting into Aristotle and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and I was surprised at how, like, these painters were super, like, universal. It's not, like, just applicable to painters, but it's, like, deep, really cool insight, and so, like, I was really surprised to see that, like, it's definitely applicable to everyone, but it's an
Mhm.
interesting because they have a very visual lifestyle, or they're very focused on the visual element of it, and so it's a very,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a very, like, it's a slightly different angle to take, like, philosophy from.
Yeah, yeah, and that's also a really great point that there's so much that goes into especially painting, in the sense of like the bringing forth images from the collective unconscious side, which is so cool. Of course, you read Carl Jung. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Uh, so much of painting is philosophy, right? It is digging deeper into the why, right? Like,
yeah,
especially after the academy, right? The academy is like the how. And then after you leave, it's very much more digging into the why. And I think it's great that, you were able to, and you have been able to explore that with philosophy and especially like these books, the more philosophical aspect of painting specifically, because obviously Aristotle will give you like philosophy, but it then becomes like a bit of a task for you to connect that into painting, which there
yeah,
is overlap and there are ways of doing it, but it can be a little bit more challenging.
yeah,
Yeah.
mm,
Um, and then you mentioned how like YouTube is almost like the like third thing, right, that you
yeah.
keep on your list. How have you handled your time management, with painting and maybe doing like, traveling, like you said, and doing these YouTube videos? What's your time management like?
Yeah, so it's definitely, there's been some priority shifts from when I was at the academy. At the academy, it's very much like the project at the academy are first, your sleep, your food, your exercise is like who cares about that, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, coming back to the States and, like, structuring my own schedule and stuff like that, my, like, health and well-being is, like, number one. I think it's, like, the most important thing. And so I'm trying to, take out time to be able to exercise every day and to be as in tune with myself as possible, as far as, like, making sure I have enough, like, social interaction, and, I'm eating right and getting enough sleep and things like that. Um,
Mm,
that's the number one thing. And then painting and, like, putting in the effort and time is the number two. And those are kind of the things that are kind of on the top, the top, of the hierarchy.
mm,
And then, like, editing videos, sending emails, applying to competitions and residencies and things like that. I'll often do those in the evenings, or if I had a week where I'm, been working really hard and feeling kind of burnt out with painting, to just kind of have a computer day where I can just kind of get all these loose ends done. Um, but yeah, I've been trying to kind of structure my schedule in that way.
nice. Yeah, and we were also kind of talking about this too earlier about how organic it is to
Yeah,
be in the career of the artist, right? It's like I feel like in today's world, it's so unnatural to do the whole 9 to 5 uh thing that everyone seems to do that honestly is pretty recent. I think it's only been like 100 years since we started that.
yeah,
And it's I feel like it's done a lot of harm to people living in that organic place of like these are my energy levels and this is what I can do with these energy levels. And like you said, self-attunement. I think I'm so happy you said that because that self-attunement is so key. And of course, at the academy, like you said, it's like you're like painting 60 hours a week, basically. Like you don't really have any time for,
yeah,
well, anything really,
yeah,
because it's such a workaholic environment. Um,
yeah,
yeah, to get the most out of it and everything, and I get it, but it can be very harmful, and oftentimes I feel like students who leave those academies, when they get home, they're super burnt out, and all they
Yeah.
wanna do is, like, sleep because it's just the hardest 4
Yeah.
years ever.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's really important to like, even if your life is, like, super imbalanced at that time, like, I think it's okay for a bit of time if you can kind of compensate afterwards. So, like, I get how, like, intense the academy needs to be, and I'm glad it is that way because, like, I want to get as much as I can out of those 3 or 4 years that I'm there. But then, like, definitely, like, the summers, like, I like, it was the summers, I was doing a lot of, like, art fairs and showing the work and selling the work and stuff like that, but I wasn't, like, doing master studies and things like that. Like, I just needed a a break from
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of like sketching and stuff like that of like my own like personal projects that I was thinking about and stuff like that. But I think it's good to like even if you have like a really imbalance for a short amount of time to just be aware that like you'll need to kind of find some sort of equilibrium at some point.
Yes. Yes, 100%. Um, and then I did wanna ask you, because since we're talking about the academy too, do you have any advice for anyone who might be thinking about going to one of these schools?
Yeah, I think going going into it with the right mentality is really important. And I was pretty lucky because I think I had a good mentality going into it because I I was aware of what they had to offer, but I didn't. It's not everything. Some people go into the academy thinking that at the end of the 3 years you're going to be, just have a line of people wanting you to do commissions for them and to have your whole life worked out, which I definitely did a little bit for sure, but but I mean it's very much like I think it's a one like a third of what it takes, like the academy stuff. Like if you want to be like a representational or to have like a technique be a big part of what you do as a painter, but it teaches you the tools, but then you still also have to have the why, and that can only really come from you. And I think it's good. Like I think it's good that the school doesn't try to teach that, but I think like people need to be like aware that you have to kind of figure that out. And then also like there's this whole marketing side and to make sure that you don't have to like say, oh, I'm going without meat this month or something like that, to make sure you can still like bring food to the table. um but yeah, so like there's definitely like these three different avenues. So like going into it I was pretty aware that these were the tools and that I still had to I had to use them for something. I couldn't just
Mm.
like stay in this world of very like academic painting for my whole life, and I didn't want to. Maybe some people like that works for them, but it's not for me. But anyway, so like going into it I was still like applying to like show my work in local places like in my hometown, like when I was back in the summer and stuff like that. So I was always looking at seeing how I can market myself, and then how I can also like kind of explore these paintings I want to do outside of the unbelievably busy schedule at the academy, but like during breaks and stuff like that. But it was always kind of on the back of my mind, even if I wasn't able to actually like do any personal paintings or anything like that outside the academy. But I was just kind of aware that these were tools, and I was kind of thinking about like just playing around with ideas of like, oh, what am I going to do after the academy? And I think that's
Mhm.
really a good thing to do because like I think just like being aware of what it is that you want to achieve. Like for some people it might be much, kind of a spectrum. People might be much more like kind of academically inclined, and other people might be much more kind of on the fringes. But I think just being aware of that at the beginning, or at least having an idea, even though it could change a lot, and I'm sure it will like by the end, but just to be aware of that I think is really
Mhm.
important.
Yeah, yeah, and that takes a lot of, like, self-understanding too. It takes a lot of, like, being with yourself, and I feel like one of the harder things being at these academies is that you can be so easily influenced too by your peers.
Yeah.
So having, like you said, like, having some time in the summers, right, between, like, the trimesters and stuff to be able to, like, or semesters, to be able to, like, do your own stuff and work on your own work, alongside working at the academy. That's so important, it's so key. And I like that you were already thinking about the marketing, right? Because especially today, like, with social media, I feel like social media has become such a, like, I guess, like, a hub, right, for everyone to, go and find inspiration, or, like, buy a piece. I mean, there are some people who do that.
Yeah.
Um, what do you have any recommendations for someone who wants to like start marketing themselves? Maybe like on social media or something.
Um, I I don't like I feel like I haven't done so much on social media. Like I just, post the work I'm doing and, like I don't have anything really insightful to say, I feel like on the social media front. But I do think like in the summers and kind of the off times of the academy, like I would be like doing group shows or like just community shows at the local art gallery and things like that. And the lady who works there was like super helpful with like just telling me like, oh, you can't frame it like this, or you can't use this for the to hang the wire on, and just those little things like that where just like slap your wrist like, oh, you can't do that. It's like
Mhm.
super unprofessional, or like people hate it when you do that. But it's all those things that's like, oh, I had no idea. Like I never even thought about that. And so I think like there's so much you can learn from just like getting out there on the local front. And it's like I didn't really sell very much and definitely didn't make much money doing that, but I gained so much experience. So then when I was able to like start doing like these larger art fairs and kind of having some larger like showings and stuff like that, it like I think I was able to like present myself in a much better way than I would have if I didn't have those experiences with the small like low risk but not much reward experiences that I was able to gain so much from. I think like comedians
Mhm.
do that a lot with like, testing out all their new jokes in like little pubs and stuff like that. So I think that's
Mhm.
something that is quite universal to like creative endeavors to like kind of practice on a small scale before you just like immediately jump into something quite large.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Starting with the small stuff and
Yeah.
gaining like experience from that. I feel like it's also very underrated. And it's great that you even during right when you were still a student, you were still attending these art fairs and putting yourself out there, which is so important to help you grow like your basically your experience and also the people who are observing you, right? Because you also meet a lot of people at those places
Yeah,
who
yeah.
might maybe start following you or might also influence your work. Like they might say something and then you'll notice something, right? Like it's such a yeah, it's like it's such a magical thing to be able to like be open and to put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. And then do you have any upcoming like shows or events or anything that you'd like to promote?
Yeah, I'm getting ready for the Bellevue Arts Museum Art Fair. It's the first year I'll be doing it, so I'll have a booth there and we'll be selling all my work. Yeah, I'm really excited. It'll be in Bellevue, Washington. And so that's July 26th to the 28th. And
Wow.
then after that, I will have a show in like my hometown in Salem, Oregon at the Salem Art Association. So I'll have a show there in September. I think like September 7th or 6th, sometime around there. Um, but yeah, yeah. So I'm looking forward to being able to kind of show all the work this summer.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And then
Yeah.
where can people find more of your work?
Instagram and then my website, and then YouTube. Those are kind of like the triad of where I post things. But yeah, my
Nice.
my website's kind of linked up to all the other kind of platforms I'm on.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll include all of your links as well
Okay.
in the show notes so everyone can check them out.
Yeah.
And then yeah, so thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I really loved this conversation. It was awesome. Definitely insightful, and I'm gonna read the art spirit for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of course.